From rewriting reality to holding his own against Cartethia, from aiding Leviathan to tricking Rober, Cristoforo has various feats within the game itself, yet we still know so little about him. Is his forte simply the ability to aura farm, or is there something more behind the Raven's mask? In today's video, I will be explaining Cristoforo's forte, according to what we know in the game. I will also elaborate on what I believe will be his real plan, what his attribute is, and what weapon type he will be. I just know that my goat Cristoforo will be playable. This ain't copium, it's hopium. Cristoforo's forte currently has no name and is shrouded in mysteries. However, we do know certain details about it. For now, let's call his forte the playwright's book, as he appears to be required to write down the play, the roles, and the plot itself within his book. He also is capable of creating books that keep track of events, and gave one to Frolova. His book also appears to let him create shields that can stop Cartethia's attack. Maybe he simply wrote down that he'll aura farm every time he is on screen, but let's focus on what we know. He requires what is known as a fictitious anchor. This is essentially what the play will be based upon, a real-world event that he wants to overwrite. He must also designate a protagonist role, but he does not need to designate an antagonist role per se. Cristoforo does not actually need the play to replay itself several times. He says he can overlay the scenario onto reality, but also specified that it was after aiding Leviathan and getting back its strength, which to me implies he can overlay it at any point. Cartethia also fought him, with the statement being so that he could not change the story or control his scenario, meaning that when the ending is met or the play breaks apart, he cannot press the restart button. A limitation of his forte appears to be that he has to consistently write in it to obtain any outcome he wants, but his personality is another limitation. He doesn't want to. He wants surprises from the characters within the story. In this, Cristoforo will always get one over on Rover, one of those villains who always wins based off of their ideology and personality. Even killing him means giving in to him. To recap, Cristoforo needs a fictitious anchor. Cristoforo must designate a protagonist. These two are non-negotiable. Anyone and everyone else become merely supporting roles. He cannot take away someone's free will, but he can swap roles, which will erase memories as a result. Cristoforo can play, replay, or end the play at any point, but must either concentrate enough or write this within his book. Cristoforo can overlay the scenario sphere onto reality, likely only once the play reaches its end. The size of the scenario sphere appears to be based on the event. Cristoforo requires first-hand knowledge of the event, either due to his personality or as a limitation he has embraced. Fortes are the unconscious made conscious. The limitations of Cristoforo's personality are also limitations of his forte. This is only his scenario sphere. This is not all he is capable of. With Frolova becoming playable, we can only assume he can do more without needing the scenario sphere. This is essentially his domain expansion or his reality marble. Now then, on to the good stuff, his playability. What attribute will he have? What weapon will he use? Well, it's quite simple. Cristoforo is likely to be a Glacio character, and hear me out here for a second. Every Glacio character deals with discovery, and yes, art is discovery of the self. There is also a second key theme, that being art itself. Dancing, painting, for Yuhu it's ancient relics such as pottery, and for Cristoforo it'll be plays. Even Carlotta is obsessed with art. It's the crystallization of his story into reality. Much like how Ling Yang crystallizes platforms for his dance, or Zhezha paints birds into reality. Now then, what about his weapon? Well, this is a fairly straightforward one as well. It'll either be a rectifier or a sword, because in a cutscene, we actually see he has a cane of some kind. Considering Phoebe has a staff, let us for the time being err on the side of rectifier, although it would be nice to let Sanhua rest a bit and have another Glacio sword user. Maybe Cristoforo will buff basic attack and Glacio damage, though probably not. If I had to guess, Cristoforo is probably going to be either a main DPS or a support where when he ults you can choose which play he writes, that being one where he can heal and buff allies, or one that can damage and debuff enemies. If he is a support, I'll be honest, since outros and intros can be almost anything, me trying to say he'll be this or that is exceptionally outlandish. That said, we can assume he'll buff the attribute if he is a support, though someone who buffs attack speed would be pretty cool to have at some point in my opinion. A Glacio sword or rectifier user who will likely be a hybrid character, a mix between damage and debuffing enemies. It would be pretty cool if he applied random debuffs to the enemy, giving Arrow Rover another person to work with. However, we simply don't know all that much. We can only speculate based on patterns in-game. In reality, Kuro can make him anything. However, perhaps his plan will give us greater insight. Cristoforo's plan with Leviathan? Nothing but a side quest he got when he felt inspired, just grinding out some levels. The real plan, I believe, has to deal with the very first trailer we got, with Yuno's symbol being corrupted by the Dark Tide. This could, however, simply refer to how Cristoforo messed with her ability due to the play he wrote, or the plan to bring it forth, as in the Dark Tide. Although, let's take a minute to understand Yuno. She can read the threads of fate. Someone like that would be of great use to the Fraxidus, corrupting her in whatever way they can. For example, if only her Forte, then perhaps she'll only see ruin and no hope. Or perhaps having her turn on Augusta and the others. Cristoforo and the Fraxidus aren't done with Septimont yet. They have only done a side quest, which to us was a main quest. This theme is also consistent, where Frolova had a normal day of torturing people, but for Rover it was an exploration quest. They've always been a step ahead, because their allies are Threnodians, active forces against humanity. What better way to defeat humanity than to target our spirit with ideas and concepts, that it is all worthless, that fighting does nothing, that the Fraxidus win in the end. I believe that 2.5 will have another main story quest, where we cross the broken bridge to the large island with the clouds. I think the next story quest will shed light on what their actual purpose in Renacida is. It couldn't just be for Leviathan. Why would there be 3 overseers if it isn't something massive? With that conversation Cristoforo had with the Primus, I can only imagine that the Order and the Fraxidus aren't done yet. Perhaps we'll see the Primus himself. After all, he did claim to commune with Imperator, who was in truth Leviathan. Following the rule of 3, perhaps the last vestige of Leviathan remaining within the world is within the Primus himself. On the topic of the Primus, it makes sense if he was corrupted by Leviathan in some way. With the ability to split parts of itself, I don't think it's far-fetched to assume Leviathan managed to split a small amount of itself into the Primus. He is a resonator after all, and survived the Dark Tide there. Isn't it a little odd how he was able to survive what no one else did? Isn't it a little odd he was able to leave? Will we fight him? Probably in a cutscene. Or maybe we'll simply arrest him and bring him to the Black Shores for study. It's odd, isn't it? How quiet and inactive the Primus has been, working with the Fraxidus. He must be waiting for a chance at something. As for what that something is, I have no idea. I can only assume that it is ruinous for humanity. But what do you all think? Do you think I'm cooking, or do you think I missed the mark and that Cristoforo is actually going to die? Whatever the case, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out.